Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of my 5 Dynasty Fantasy Football takeaways. The fantasy season might be over, but Dynasty Fantasy Football never stops. Let's get into takeaway number 1. CeeDee Lamb is in the Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson tier. I mean, if you had CeeDee Lamb, you probably won this week. He had 13 catches, 227 yards, and a touchdown on 17 targets. I mean, that's insane. This year, he already has 1,651 yards and 10 touchdowns, 122 catches. He's pacing very similarly to Justin Jefferson's 2022 campaign, where he broke 1,800 yards. It's far better than any year Jamar Chase has had. I still rank it Jefferson number 1, Chase 2, Lamb 3, but it is very, very close. There's not like a big gap between them like there was. They're in the first round of Superflex Dynasty startups. They're the only non-quarterbacks I have in there. The only assets on that level. At their best, they can win a league for you on their own. And they're also the only young wide receivers that can do that. I love Amon-Ra. I love Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Puka Nacua, AJ Brown, who we'll talk about in a sec. But they all disappear at times, or they haven't been in this hyper elite option range. Lamb turns 25 in April. He's just 2 months older than Jefferson, 11 months older than Chase. He's in the same tier as they are. And if you have him, he is a cornerstone dynasty asset, and you should be very happy that he's on your team. Next takeaway, Justin Fields. He is going to be an NFL starting quarterback in 2024. Not if, not maybe. He's going to be. He's good enough. He went 20 of 32 this week for 268 yards and a touchdown, plus 11 for 45 and a touchdown on the ground. He also did it with weapons. No Darnell Mooney, out with a concussion. Cole Kmet used as a decoy with his injury. So he only had DJ Moore, and Moore had 9 catches for 159 yards and a touchdown on 13 targets. No one else in the receiving game did anything at all, but Fields still got it done. This year, I'm not going to say he's been a great passer because he hasn't, but he's been better. It's an improvement. 201.2 passing yards a game. Definitely better on the volume. 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. 61% completion. He still has 112 carries for 630 yards and 4 touchdowns, averaging 52.5 rushing yards a game. It's eerily similar to Jaylen Hurts' 2021 season. Now, it's coming in his 3rd full year as a starter. I'm not as impressed as I was when Jaylen Hurts did it in his 1st year as a starter. And additionally, I don't know if we can say that Fields is going to take more steps forward like Hurts has. But either way, he's been good enough to start again. If the Bears did not have the Panthers pick, they would have an easy path forward. They would keep head coach Matt Eberflus for his, he's done well with the defense. The defense has improved more than the offense. They would fire offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, which they need to do, and replace him with someone more tailored to Fields' strengths. They'd probably let Darnell Mooney walk in free agency and take a wide receiver with their 10th overall pick to complement DJ Moore. Unfortunately, they have the top overall pick for the 2nd straight year. And they made the right decision last year to pass on Bryce Young. Maybe not to pass on CJ Stroud, but, it is what it is. However, passing on Caleb Williams might be impossible. Either way, though, Justin Fields is going to be a starter next year. However, he will need to improve as a passer to go from a starting quarterback to a franchise quarterback. Those are not the same thing. Like Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback. But there are a lot of starting quarterbacks. And that's not the same. That's not the same level. Like Jordan Love is a starting quarterback, but I wouldn't say he's a franchise quarterback yet. So because of that risk, Justin Fields is dynasty quarterback 15 in my ranks. There's a lot of risk. We have to acknowledge that. If he's bad next year, he will not be a starter in 2025. So, because that's when the big money starts. That's just my take on Justin Fields. But he's going to be a starter next year. Atlanta would be a good spot, considering how many weapons they have. Now, a little more negative here. Travis Kelce, he's done. let's understand what that means. Okay. Kelce can still play the tight end position as a top 10-ish option for the NFL right now overall. But as a high-end fantasy option, he's done. Rashee Rice was the only receiver who did anything in this game. Anything in the game against the Bengals. He had 127 yards, 5 catches on 6 targets. Travis Kelce was 3 for 16 on 4 targets. He looked terrible. He looked slow. He dropped a pass. This is many drops. Looked slow constantly. Noah Gray had the same targets and outproduced him by a yard. 59% of snaps for Gray, 81% for Kelce. Kelce's still the starter, but it's concerning that a nobody in Noah Gray is doing the same production. And guys like Justin Watson and MVS had 3 targets each. That's 1 less than Kelce. Since week 7, where he had a massive fantasy outburst, it's all kind of fallen apart. Over the following 9 games, he's just averaged 5 catches and 51 yards a game and has 1 total touchdown in that span. That's fine, but that's only 85 catches and 867 yards over a 17-game season. There's a lot of tight ends in that production range. So for Dynasty, given that Kelce is 34 years old and might retire, he's not a top 10 Dynasty tight end, which would have sounded crazy 5 weeks ago. But he's not. He's not a top 10 Dynasty tight end. You might have gotten your last ever fantasy game from Travis Kelce. That's very possible. But even if he does come back, I'd easily prefer Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, DJ Hawkinson, and George Kittle. They're all either much younger, have similar production, or both in the cases of Laporta, Hawkinson, Kittle. They're both of those things. And McBride lately. Even Kelce versus someone like Evan Ingram or David Njoku, they've been way better lately and are far younger. So, you're comparing Kelce to guys like Michael Mayer, who hasn't done anything but might produce later. Dallas Goedert's, up and down situation. So, yeah, Travis Kelce is way, way down in my dynasty ranks. And, I don't have any Travis Kelce, but if I did, I would recommend selling him while you still can. And I'm fine selling low, taking whatever you can get. Next, the Eagles, they have some serious offensive issues. Somehow they managed to lose this game to the Cardinals, 35-31. I don't know how they pulled that off. Jalen Hurts was okay, but he only had 167 passing yards on 23 attempts. He did have 3 touchdowns, threw a pick, 8 for 25 rushing. DeAndre Swift, they don't get him involved in the goal line. He doesn't get receptions. Devonta Smith had an injury. And then, A.J. Brown had 4 for 53 on 5 targets. Smith, 3 for 30 on 5 targets. Dallas Goedert, 5 catches, 47 yards, and touchdown on 6 targets. That's a little better, but Julio Jones vultured the only 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown can't have 5 targets. The Eagles also had a pick 6, so they only scored 24 offensive points and not 31. 275 total yards. They're now 11-5 after starting 10-1. The Eagles, there's a problem here. They need to focus on getting more out of their best players. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith need to have more than 5 targets each. That doesn't work. Jalen Hurts has kind of regressed back to 2021. He's still getting the fantasy points because of ridiculous 15 rushing touchdowns, but we're not at the high efficiency numbers of last year. Just 7.3 yards per attempt, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions passing. I'm not saying he's been bad, but he hasn't been the same as a passer. It's hurt the fantasy weapons, and they need to find a way to get A.J. Brown more involved. He was furious after this game, and he should be. He's one of the best receivers in the league, and 5 targets for one of the best receivers in the league is not good enough. So the Eagles need to look at that during the offseason and maybe make some changes. Last one. Suddenly, both Steelers running backs have fantasy value. Najee Harris was the lead back. He had 27 carries for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaylen Warren had 13 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown and 4 catches for 23 yards. Najee played 53% of snaps, Warren 54% of snaps, so almost identical snap share. 40 total running back carries versus 24 passing attempts from Mason Rudolph. It was very interesting. We know that the Steelers fired their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, mid-season. but it did not magically fix the passing game. That hasn't been that much better. But the running game suddenly fixed, especially Najee Harris. Najee Harris is the one who's been vastly improved without Canada. Since the Canada firing, Jaylen Warren has 60 carries for 258 yards and a touchdown, 22 receptions for 119 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. Najee Harris, 101 carries, 424 yards, and 4 touchdowns, but only 5 receptions, 4.2 yards a carry, 16.8 carries per game, but he has no receptions in the last 3 games. So both running backs are playing well, and they're being used in appropriate roles. Najee Harris is being used near the goal line, taking the hard carries. Jaylen Warren, more in the passing game, more on the outside as a runner. In PPR Dynasty, they're similar ages. They're both born in 1998. Warren's a few months younger and has less wear on his tires. So I would lean toward Warren in our regular PPR Dynasty format. But neither of them are going away, and this is going to be a split for next year. We haven't seen it, but both running backs have what I would call the ultimate handcuff value. They're both flex plays when they're both playing, but if one of them is out, there is no RB3 on this team. If one of them's out, the other one gets everything. They'll get 95% of touches, and they would be in a fantasy RB1. Unfortunately, in Dynasty, it doesn't work that way. You can't assume that someone's going to get hurt. So I'm looking at selling both of them. They're both 25 already. You can't trust them on a week-to-week basis. And if you can get, maybe a 24-second and a 25-second for either of them, I would take it, because I just think there are better options. But it's nice to see them both involved. Now, we don't have many Patreon questions this week, but I just want to thank everyone who signed up for the Patreon at patreon.com/fantasyadvice. The link is in the top right corner of the video. Only patrons get to submit advanced questions. So make sure that you sign up for the Patreon in order to do that. And of course, if you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way to support the channel. We just passed 2,300 subscribers. So I appreciate everyone who supported me on that. With that said, we only have one Patreon question, so I'll just run it real quick. How much would you be willing to add to JSN or Flowers to buy into Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors? Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. is significantly above these two. JSN is not nearly as good of a prospect and had kind of a meh rookie year. Zay Flowers, similarly, although the rookie year was a little bit better, not as good of a prospect. So, yeah, to get from JSN to, would I add a would I add a 25 first to JSN to get Marvin Harrison Jr.? Probably. Or Flowers, yeah, probably. That's probably what it's going to cost. Neighbors, he'll probably be ranked a little bit higher than JSN for me, but not a first between them. Maybe a late second. Neighbors will be in the same tier as JSN, but definitely not a first between them. We'll see. I mean, I still haven't finalized the rookie process, but Marvin Harrison Jr. could be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver coming into the league. So I look at my dynasty rankings, and I'll have Jefferson, Chase, and Lamb ahead of him. Probably Amon-Ra, and that might be end of list. He might be right after them at number 5. So I appreciate this question, and you got to look for the content coming out. We're going to have plenty of dynasty rookie content on the channel. Once again, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel on the YouTube. We're going to have dynasty fantasy football content throughout the off season. We're going to have the same video schedule, many videos, dynasty stashes, dynasty rookie content, dynasty buys and sells, all of it. So you got to come here to check it out. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace out.